Hey everybody, Argent here. So people have been asking me for a long time to stream a Paradox strategy game during one of the Q&As. I guess share my years of experience with everybody, or whatever you want to call it. I remember the first Paradox strategy game I played back when it was new, before Doomsday had ever come out, which was Hearts of Iron 2. And we also have, yeah, there's been a bunch of games over time. I remember when Doomsday came out, I was super excited. Hearts of Iron 3 was kind of one of the games that was initially kind of shitty, but it got progressively better over time. And I really like it, to be honest. Um, the issue I have with it is I find there's too many provinces to manually control armies anymore. But the theater system they gradually improved, and now it doesn't work bad. So I'm playing as Japan because Japan's my favorite country to play as in EU4. Sorry, not EU4, Hearts of Iron 3. Probably because there's just kind of the most potential. It's one of the more kind of strategically complicated ones. I mean, the Soviet Union is just overpowered. America's overpowered. Germany's interesting. Italy's interesting. And Japan's interesting. So, what are kind of the tips and tricks I found what are kind of some of the tips and tricks I found for playing as Japan? Now, the single most important thing when you're playing as Japan is you have to constantly be building industrial capacity. Japan is kind of a best of times, worst of times country. On one hand, Japan has immense potential for growth, and it isn't really near any enemies that are a real threat. Eventually, America, but at the moment, it's nothing particularly strong. The Soviet Union, I guess, is your biggest threat, but they have trouble getting enough troops out here to challenge you, even if you join the war against them. So you have that. At the same time, your IC is low and you have no natural resources. So these are kind of the best of times, worst of times situation you find yourself in as the Kingdom of the Rising Sun. So, priority one is building industrial capacity. This comes first, even above shipbuilding. We can build ships later on, and I'll certainly need them when I'm fighting America. But for the first couple years of the war, you just have to build ships. In fact, I recommend delaying your entry into World War II for a while until you get enough ships to at least hold America off. So let's see here. So let's start out with technology. So in HOI3, I always like to start off with the theories. So for those of you who haven't played the game, what the theories do is the theories decrease the rate at which your technologies decay. It also increases the rate at which you research pretty much everything in the game. And since you aren't in total war yet, it's a good chance to build these things up. So I'll just take most of the basic research. Now, as Japan, I'm not going to spare any time or trouble in building tanks. You don't have the oil and you don't have the industrial capacity. Infantry are going to form the bulk of your army. You can make up for just not having tanks by investing heavily in... Oh, someone's not saying they don't know what the theories do. Okay, so I'll just explain this a bit. So what determines research speed is what the prerequisites are for the various... if the quality's too low to read stuff, let me know. The prerequisites are for various types of research. So in this case, for artillery carriage and sights, we have artillery theory, which is provided by researching artillery technology. Also, it's provided by the technology artillery. Then we also have artillery practical, which is gotten by building artillery. So that determines the research rate. Now, over time, these will decay, but the theories reduce the rate at which they decay. So first off, I'm just investing in things that make infantry better, because that's going to be the overwhelming majority of my forces. I don't have to really worry too much about an air force, even though Japan is technically an air power, because airplanes are pretty easy to update later. So I'm just going to start researching battleship and carrier stuff. That's also super important. And destroyers are also good. I normally like battleships and destroyers. Carriers are not very good in Hearts of Iron 3 compared to Hearts of Iron 2. So, yeah, we'll just put those up. Those are kind of priority 1. And let's see, what other technology do we need? Supply production. It's going to be a tight couple of years until I really get the economy going. But once I have China conquered, things should be moving along swimmingly. Okay, so there we go. We have that ready. I'll set that to auto just in case something finishes. Now for production. So let's see here. First off, we're going to build some garrisons. Japan has a lot of territory to cover, so you're definitely going to need a lot of occupation forces. I don't normally annex China because China's just, it's not very, what would be the term, practical to hold that much. So there we go. I'm going to build some infantry. I'm just going to build some artillery and anti-tank as independent. I'll let the AI reorg that. So there we go. And artillery, which is also high priority. Artillery I have to spend a little, that's okay for the moment. What else do we have? Build some cavalry. Cavalry is actually very useful as Japan because the Chinese don't really have, much of an army, so to speak. So, actually, you know what? Let me just redo these as reserves. Reserves are kind of overpowered in this game because it takes a lot less time to build to reinforce to full strength than it does to build. Then you save by just building reserves. So there we go. Start off with 22 of that. I don't need motorized. Let's see here. Anti-tank. Yes, anti-tank is useful. Not yet, but anti-tank does some damage against normal infantry. So we need... Let's see. Where's artillery? Okay. Anti-tank. Oh, anti-tank's super cheap to build. We also have AA. AA is good. And we need some cavalry. And then that'll be pretty good to start off with. Or do I already have cavalry being built? Yeah, I do. Okay. So that'll start off with the production of an army. I still have a decent amount of manpower left. I'm going to put off building ships for a year or two until I have some more industrial capacity. So I think we're ready to hit unpause. So I'll turn on automate trade. So let's see here. Just while we're doing that, let's look at what the chat is. Hello, new follower. Thank you, Savage Blars. Good to see you. Justin says, I'm currently playing a game as Poland. I've joined the Axis and conquered half of Czechoslovakia. So a couple people have... It's kind of interesting. I'm trying to remember what I was thinking of. I'm reading a book at the moment on the Soviet Union, kind of the rise and fall of Soviet communism. And I've heard people suggest that there were thoughts, and some people in Poland were wondering if an alliance with Germany as kind of an anti-communist, kind of a grand anti-communist bloc might have been a good idea. Whether or not that would have worked or was even possible, I'm not really sure. But it's an interesting concept. So let's see here. So I'm going to set the theater AI to... At the moment, I don't really need to worry about some of the other territories. So I'm just going to set them to prioritize taking coastal cities once we go to war. eventually I want to prioritize trying to take Pearl Harbor, because beating beating America by the Navy is almost impossible, but you can at least hold them off long enough to get your stuff going. Now, another thing that's really helpful is using your intelligence to increase the threat generated by the UK. So that'll push the various allied nations against away from the UK and give you a couple of years. As Japan, I don't normally join the war until like 1943 or something. Just because you really don't want to join until until everything's in place. So let's see here: Theater HQ, Imperial General Kwangtong. I'm going to withdraw from the Soviet Union. Oh, okay. So yeah, I'm reading a really interesting book about the Soviet Union. I read a book a while back called Stalin Breaker of Nations. And Stalin Breaker of Nations was kind of interesting because it says how Stalin offered Hitler a series of peace treaties throughout the war. The first treaty was was offering I think it was in 1941, the same terms as Brest-Litovsk, or whatever, where he offered to cede Germany immense amounts of territory in exchange for stopping the war. Now, unfortunately, Germany rejected that. The second treaty they offered, I think, was before Kursk, was just a white peace, the the 1930-41 borders, which the Germans also refused. And the last treaty they offered them was I'm trying to remember what the borders were. It was it was just the 1918 borders. So they got offered a variety of different stuff. Litvsk. It's no, I know how to spell it. I just don't know how to pronounce it exactly. Yeah, but the Hitler refused to take it because he wanted to capture all of the Soviet Union. It's kind of interesting regarding Mussolini, because to a certain extent one has to wonder why he even entered World War II. The Italians didn't really stand to gain that much. They weren't really given any of France. I guess they were given like parts of Greece and that kind of area, but they really weren't given a ton of territory per se. I guess the most they could have hoped for was the rest of North Africa and little bits of Greece. They also got, I guess, a bit of Croatia, but really for risking everything, I don't think it was really worth it to enter World War One. But that was kind of how Mussolini wanted to roll in the First World War. I also need to build a couple transports. I think they got Corsica and maybe Nice. Yeah, they got a little bit of territory. I don't think it was really worth the amount of resources they had to put in. Italy performed really bad in both world wars. Probably the worst performing power in both world wars, I'd say, is Austro-Hungary, which performed absolutely horrifically in World War One. I think people are a bit unfair. I think the Ottomans didn't do a bad job considering how backward they were in terms of their army. They actually didn't perform terribly. They had really bad leadership issues, kind of like Italy, particularly the idea to launch offensives in Armenia in the winter. But the Turks weren't really that bad, to be perfectly honest. From my understanding, the two best performing countries in World War One were probably Bulgaria and what's the other country? Serbia. Serbia performed extremely well relative to the size of their army. They managed to beat the Austro-Hungarians a couple times. What kind of happened in World War One was very early in the war. I think it was in the first couple months. Let's see here. Book you talk about was written by Robert Conquest, very based man. Commies hate him. Yeah, Robert Conquest. Yeah, he's a I really enjoyed it. I think he's referring to... Yeah, Robert Conquest. Yeah, Robert Conquest is a good author. I'll have to see if there's some more histories by him on Audible. There was a sale on Audible a week or two ago, which was the Great Courses series. It was a 2-for-1, so I got a whole bunch of them. Let me see what all the books were that I bought. I got The Rise and Fall of Soviet Communism. I got History's Greatest Military Blunders, Great Ideas in Philosophy, The Modern Political Tradition, and The Industrial Revolution. If I was Mussolini, I would want nothing to do with Africa and start the Latin Empire. I mean, maybe Mussolini could have offered the Nazis like a deal. Like they would not join the Axis, but they'd take over administering some of the various conquered territories. There's a lot of kind of interesting what ifs in World War II, particularly with regards to issues like what if Italy hadn't have entered the war? I mean, I think it's arguable that they were a net detriment to Germany, because Germany had to bail them out in Greece, Germany had to bail them out in Italy, Germany had to bail them out in North Africa, and it took up just kind of a lot of extra time and resources that they really didn't have to spare on side projects. But that was kind of the issue in both world wars, is Germany just had to deal with a lot of people who just weren't as competent as they were. So there we go. I'm going to reassign that, and hopefully they'll start ferrying soldiers over to the mainland. Okay, there we go. Destroyer advances. I'm going to wait a couple years before I start building destroyers. Another thing to keep in mind about ferries is the best, generally speaking, when we, let's see here, I see wasted. Okay, I'm only wasting one. Is the higher your theories are, the less time and IC things take to build. Yeah, the invasion of Ethiopia was kind of a waste of time and money. Ethiopia doesn't really have any natural resources that I can think of. One Italian guy I know said it was to get coffee, which is sounds possible. Let's see here. I need to increase the number of officers. Like I said, Japan's kind of best of times, worst of times, because we have a lot of potential for expansion, but at the same time, Japan is not a resource-rich country. It has a lot of manpower, but it doesn't really have manpower compared to the big boys, as it were, compared to like Germany, even Italy, a lot of those various powers. Let's see here. So trying to get these guys to relocate to the mainland, which can be quite a trouble. The AI for transportation is pretty awful in this game. You have to kind of play with it to get it to transport troops properly. One of kind of the big things they talk about a lot in the rise and fall of Soviet communism is whether or not the Nazis could have ever won the war, which is, I think, one of the big what ifs. Could the Nazis have ever actually beaten the Soviets? I kind of lean towards no. I kind of lean towards whatever twists and turns World War II took. I don't think the Germans could have won. I just think that the Soviet Union was just too strong in terms of its manpower, resources, and will to resist. It's just too much land to occupy for Germany. And I kind of feel even if Germany had have somehow managed to scrape a victory out of the war, what would have happened was they would have won the war, but they would have been so weak. Holy fuck, did it just crash? Oh, come the fuck on. Ugh. Paradox strategy games. Okay, so that crashed. I'm going to have to reload. Paradox strategy games are infamous for being super, super unstable. They crash constantly. It's, I think, the worst thing about them. And I always like to say Paradox is a paradox because they make excellent games, but their games have like really shitty performance issues. So hopefully I didn't lose that much data. I forget what I have autosave set on. I normally autosave based on month because the game crashes so often. EU4 also crashes like crazy. Like a bug they've never managed to fix in the EU games is whenever you end a campaign and you try to get back to the main menu, it always crashes. So as Evan points out, I was going to get to that. The best answer I've ever heard of for how Germany could have won World War II was what they probably could have done is set up a government in exile. Tried to find some of the remaining white leaders or just some Russian dissidents, set up a rival government, and offered all the minorities in the Soviet Union independence, or at least kind of autonomy as German satellite states. Heinz Guderian famously commented, "We lost the Eastern Front the day we didn't raise the Ukrainian flag over the main cathedral in Kiev." Because I think the Ukrainians would have fought to the death for the Germans if they had been promised independence. The Baltic states would have. A lot of the minorities really, really hated them. Kind of one of the funny things about Mussolini was he probably did more for the Catholic Church than just about anybody. Oh my god, it didn't autosave? What the fuck? I have to do that all over? Fuck you, Paradox. Fuck you and your shitty fucking bugged games. Argent experiences bugged Paradox game mechanics. Do I have to fucking redo all of this? Oh, maybe I'll just cheat. That's one of the main reasons I often use cheats in Paradox games, just because they fucking crash so often and I have to redo shit. So, don't worry, I'm not going to rage quit. I'm just going to have to remember to set autosave on monthly. Just because it's really fucking annoying how often these things crash. I just reinstalled this game, so I hadn't checked that. I assumed it was going to be the same as the last time I installed it, but apparently it wasn't. So, yeah, I'm going to have to go through this all again. Sorry about that. Let's see here. So, fuck it. I'm just going to cheat to redo these. Fuck you, Paradox. Okay, there we go. And let's redo this shit. So I wanted infantry divisions. And I'll take 25. Let's see here. I want some cavalry divisions, and I'll take 25 of those as well. What else do I need? So yeah, the Lateran Treaty, the Catholic Church today, for whatever reason, wants to kind of ignore that it ever happened. But the Lateran Treaty ended the period of what was known as the prisoner in the Vatican. After the Kingdom of Italy succeeded in conquering the Papal States, the Vatican refused to accept that their reign had ended, and the popes refused to leave the Lateran Palace, or refused to kind of leave the what we'd call Vatican City, as for whatever reason they believed that somehow they could convince the Italian government to reverse the Papal States' complete destruction or something like that. It was not particularly bright or plausible. Let me just make sure I have this set to monthly autosave. But yeah, they thought for whatever reason that that was like a good and plausible idea. God knows for what reason. So yeah, so Mussolini basically offered the Catholic Church a good deal. Catholicism would be the state religion of Italy. Catholicism would be the state religion of Italy, or some of the other terms of the Lateran Treaty. The Papal States would get a whole bunch of money. The Papal States would be acknowledged as a sovereign nation. And what were some of the other terms? The Catholic Church would receive funding from the Italian government. So yeah, I think I forget what it's called. It's called something or other. But in Italy, you can allocate part of your taxes to the religious institution of your choice, be it the Catholic Church, a Protestant church, if you're Jewish, a synagogue. If you want, you can allocate it to the Italian state, and in the Italian state, I think they use it for some sort of disaster and famine relief or something like that. But it was a very popular policy that remains in place to this day. A lot of European countries to this day have church taxes, which have made a lot of churches very wealthy compared to other parts of the world. Now, church taxes are optional. You're just allowed to earmark a certain percentage. It's called 8 per thousand. Okay, yep, that's what it's called. Okay, thank you. But yeah, a lot of European countries to this day have church taxes. So you can allocate a certain amount of your money towards the religious institution of your choice. It's kind of the irony because in Germany, Germany's well known for having maybe the worst Catholic Church of any country on earth, which is really saying something considering that Latin America exists. But the joke the remnant had was the church of the poor brought you by the church of the rich, because the German church always talks about the church of the poor. The irony, of course, being that the German church is one of the wealthiest on earth because of the subsidies it gets from the German government. I believe Argentina is one of the last countries where Catholicism is the state religion, and the Catholic Church gets a fair amount of state funding in Argentina. It's kind of weird because there's a lot of countries where they're basically Catholicism is the state religion, but for whatever reason, I guess because when the Catholic Church went through the liberalization period, they stopped supporting the idea of having Catholicism as the national religion in a lot of countries. So, like, Catholicism is not the official religion of Poland, which is weird. Because, like, in Poland, they recently had a ceremony that the president of Poland attended where they declared Jesus Christ to be the King of Poland. So you have the president of Poland going to a ceremony basically declaring, well, yeah, literally declaring Jesus to be the King of Poland, but Catholicism is not the official state religion. Is Cardinal Casper German, the dude who wants divorce? Yes. The German Catholic Church is regarded as being the worst on earth. If any of you know who Earl of Grey is, Earl of Grey is actually a very good friend of mine. If you ever have the honor of meeting Earl of Grey or just talking to him, he's very different than his online persona. Earl of Grey is like one of the sweetest people I've ever met. He's a very, very nice person. Very shy, actually. But yeah, he's German. Bavarian, actually. Well, he's American, but German. He splits his time pretty evenly between Germany and the United States. But yeah, he's very depressed at the state of his country. He really, really hates Prussians. He hates kind of Prussian Germany, and he wishes that he kind of wishes that Bavaria would become independent again, because Bavaria is pretty well known as being by far the most right-wing part of Germany. Like, the only reason, to a large extent, that the Christian Democrats win elections on a consistent basis is because the Christian Social Union in Bavaria is so overwhelmingly powerful. I believe that the Christian Social Union at a state level has won every Bavarian election since World War II. So I think Bavaria also has taken the strongest anti-migrant stance of any part of Germany. But yeah, Bavaria's a very nice place. I was very briefly there when I went to Europe. I was going to Neuschwanstein, but yeah. In fact, I don't think any state excluding the Vatican has Catholicism as a state religion. Let me see here. There's a difference between a state religion and a state church. Okay, I think they must have abolished it in Argentina very recently, to be perfectly honest. Let's see here. Where's Argentina? A lot of them were disestablished during the communist era. I think of the countries that still have a state religion, Greece and Armenia are Georgia. I think both have Orthodoxy as their state religion. The dildo countries have it as their state religion, and a couple countries have it as their national church. See here, Johannes the Sugarman says, as a descendant of Catholics who fled the culture comp, I can understand his opinion of Prussia. Yeah, he really hates Prussia. I'm not sure if he still hates them as much as he did, but he really just feels that they ruined Germany. But like I said, he's Bavarian, and Bavaria's kind of stuck in a suicide pact with the rest of the German Reich. Yeah, some people say Austria is best Germany. Austria is a really nice place. The Austrian people, just from the brief time I'm there, are a lot warmer and friendlier than the Germans. At least that's what I found. But no, Austria is really nice. Austria is also a lot more conservative than Germany is. Okay, let's see here. Fritz loves Imperial Prussia. Yeah, a lot of people do. I mean, I have mixed opinions. So people are having discussion in the chat of whether fascism is left or right wing. I would say it is a right wing philosophy. It is really a syncretic philosophy. It's kind of weird though. Fascism is a strange beast. I think the thing you have to understand about fascism is, like all right-wing ideologies, it's not so much theoretical as it is based on the individual character of the people. So in Italy, fascism was, in my opinion at least, a lot more moderate than it was in, say, Germany, for instance, just because the Italians are a much harder people to control. I don't think totalitarianism is really in the Italian character to nearly the same extent the Germans are. Just because Italians are a lot harder to get marshaled in that way. I think there's just kind of a more of a natural distrust and more of a and that sort of thing. And I mean, in Romania, fascism took an extremely religious nature, whereas in some other countries it was more secular. And then you had Spanish fascism, or if you could call phalangism, which was also very different from other forms of fascism. It's an interesting kind of mixture of different things. But I think what's very important when you talk about fascism is, I think generally speaking, you can call it a range of far right populist movements that emerged in response to socialism and in particular communism, and was kind of a way for the middle working and upper classes that were anti-communist to mass mobilize the population against communism. I think is kind of a good way to describe it. It kind of emerged as a natural reaction to communism in the interwar period. But yeah, there's always been a lot of debate as to whether Francoism is actually a form of fascism or not. Because Francoism combined just aspects of, I guess you could say, traditional authoritarian conservatism, aspects of socialism, aspects of monarchism, and even kind of aspects of constitutional monarchy. It was kind of very different compared to a lot of other forms. Someone refers to Engelbert Dollfuss. Yeah, Austrian fascism is also regarded as historically being more moderate, just in terms of the amount of state terrorism and violence it used compared to kind of, I guess you could say, some other forms of fascism. But once again, that's kind of a reflection of the Austrian character. It is interesting though. It is one of the most interesting, I guess you could say, political ideologies the world's ever seen, because it emerged on such a wide scale, but almost as soon as it emerged, it immediately kind of vanished from the global stage. I did a video. I know I just put up a ton of shit, and it's always very difficult because I'm bipolar, and when I get manic I just throw a bunch of shit up. But let's see here. We have, if you want to kind of see my in-depth kind of opinion on what fascism is exactly, I did a video where I talk about the New Order in Star Wars, and I kind of describe how I see fascism in some of its elements. It's very... I think the thing you have to understand about fascism is it's collectivism, but it's national collectivism instead of international collectivism, as opposed to kind of the more the opposite. Because I think in communism, communism is not inherently statist. In most communist philosophy, the idea is that the state would eventually wither away, which was kind of Marx's and Stalin and Lenin's idea. So like the idea of communism was it was supposed to be a transitional phase. You would have the dictatorship of the proletariat, you would have the all-powerful central government, and the all-powerful central government would pave the way for socialism, and then it would fade away. So in communism, the state was kind of seen as, I don't know if a necessary evil is the correct term, but it was seen as a means to an end, whereas I would argue in fascism the state was seen as an end in of itself, because the state was basically considered to be functionally identical to the nation, or kind of to the people and culture of the nation, and people were kind of viewed as natural extensions of the state. So I think that's kind of a critical difference between communism and fascism, is the role of the state as being either an end in of itself or a etc. Let me see if I can, I'll post a link to this. Hopefully this won't get too loud, but I recommend this because I think this is one of kind of my better videos. If you want. But yeah, so so I think another aspect to understand about fascism is it is both progressive and reactionary. Because I mean, there is progressive parts of fascism, modernism, often embracing things like minimalism, futurism. Futurism, I don't think, was founded initially as being a fascist ideology or fascist art movement, but it was very quickly kind of pulled into the fascist movement in Italy, and futurism kind of became part of the art style of the Mussolini period. And I think you can really see that just talking about Star Wars is kind of in line with fascism. The Empire tends to favor very kind of modernist, minimalist aesthetics, but also very grand in scale. And if you kind of look at the stuff Albert Speer did and kind of the art of Nazism and fascism, it's often is very kind of drab, very gray, very kind of colorless, almost kind of minimalist, but at a very huge and massive scale, which is kind of an interesting combination. There's also fascism talks about the new man. It's very willing to embrace technology, science, modern forms of government, and modern instruments of culture. But it also has extremely traditional views of gender roles and that sort of thing. So it's a very kind of interesting phenomenon because you kind of have this. Let's see, your communism intended to change the way it is used. Leninists intended to establish a proletariat dictatorship, which would be used by the working class to oppress the bourgeoisie. I do think that was kind of the short term goal. Long term, it's kind of hard to think what exactly they were planning to do. Yeah, Italian fascism, just in response to what somebody said, did incorporate a lot of Roman elements, but I do think there is an aspect of minimalism there. There is kind of a disdain. I think it's part of the Nazi song or one of their songs that talks about against the revolutionaries and reactionaries. There was a lot of the old conservatives in Germany who really didn't like Nazism. In particular, I think Hugenberg really didn't like Nazism, and a lot of the NDVP kind of viewed them as being thugs. And they viewed them as like not having discipline or principle. Well, a discipline maybe not really, but there was very mixed feelings from I guess you could say the pre-Nazi far right as to whether the Nazis should be embraced or excluded. It was kind of also interesting in the book I was reading about communism because prior to World War II, the Germans and Russians had a fairly close relationship as they were both kind of conceived as being the pariahs of Europe, as it were. But yeah, fascism and economics is a very interesting topic. I have a friend who describes Spain as being really the only time you've really had a truly socialist state under Franco. Because you had immense amount of worker participation in government. Worker councils in Francoist Spain had a lot of authority, way more than they did in the Soviet Union, and that kind of thing. So let me just speed this up. We should have the Marco Polo Bridge incident fairly soon. But at the moment, I'm just working on building stuff up. Let's see here. I want to start building battleships as soon as possible. Let's see here. But no, communism proved to be a lot more resilient than fascism was in the long term. There's a couple reasons for this. Probably the most likely thing was just because communism had a parent country that was willing to spend limitless amounts of money and manpower spreading their ideology around the world, which is something fascism lacked after the collapse of Nazi Germany. There was no longer, I guess you could say, a fascist superpower to champion the ideology. So I think you could say part of the reason for its eventual collapse was simply there just wasn't anybody advocating it anymore. Also, its defeat in World War II, I guess you could say, kind of discredited in the minds of most of the world's politicians. While there are movements that I think emerged after World War II that are very identifiable as being fascist or crypto fascist, in particular, I would say Peronism and Baathism are basically variants of fascism. It in general was just something that didn't survive the Second World War, for good or bad, depending on how you feel about it. Let's see here. The thing you have to understand about the Soviet Union during the World War II period is Stalin was extremely impulsive and not very consistent in his policy. So while it seemed ideologically weird that he wanted to kind of join the Axis and join with Nazi Germany, at the same time, Stalin was kind of a psychopath. He very much just kind of did whatever he felt like. And to a certain extent, his government was government by whim, I guess you could say, is kind of one way of describing it during the Stalinist era. I'm going to start building a couple battleships, maybe just one. Start building a couple destroyers, build a couple escort carriers, maybe, just to get my skill in it up for when I begin the grand shipbuilding program, which I will undertake eventually. And I also want a landing craft. But one of the things actually it posits in the current lecture I'm reading is that the Great Famine, the Holodomor, was a deliberate genocide undertaken by Stalin. So the reasons why the person who's giving the lecture views it as being a deliberate genocide was Ukraine, in contrast to most of the rest of the Soviet Union, was the most resistant to the collectivization of the farms. The Ukrainian people were extremely opposed to it and basically rioted and refused to go along with the Soviet plan, and that really kind of triggered him, and he kind of decided to beat Ukraine into submission and to teach them a lesson by isolating Ukraine and beating it into submission more or less through deliberate food shortages. The professor who's giving the lecture says that they banned people from invading. Banned food shipments from being shipped in, but not from being shipped out, which was part of why the famine occurred. But Ukraine isn't a real state in the same way Armenia is. It was created after the fall of Imperial Russia. It has been known as Malorussia. Yeah, that's kind of the issue with the Ukraine, is it's never really kind of been a real country in the way a lot of people were. Someone's referencing the Ukrainians in Russia, the anarchists in the Ukraine. Yeah, the anarchists in Ukraine actually killed a lot of my people, because my mother's side they weren't from the Volga, but they were Volga Germans or Mennonites, that kind of a thing. And my family fortunately got out before the revolution really happened, went into full swing. But a lot of my people who didn't get out were massacred by the Revolutionary Insurrectionary Army, which was an anarchist army. who was actually so LARPy and so shitty that even the Soviets hated them and thought that they were retards, which says a lot. Let's see here. So yeah, some of my family is my mother's side is German Mennonite, and my father's side is Anglo. So it's interesting because I have no Slavic blood actually. When I did 23andMe, I was expecting there to maybe be a little bit of Slavic blood, but there wound up being absolutely none in my gene pool, which, as I said, was kind of a surprise. I figured there'd be just a little bit of it, but nope. I'm pure northwestern European with like a tiny bit of some other stuff. Let's see. I'll keep building destroyers. I'll switch those over in a minute or two. The escort carriers are almost ready. Just keep building stuff. Okay, so I can have the Marco Polo bridge incident happen now. So once I invade China, I'll start my naval shipbuilding program. Now, I did not really have as much whatchamacallit as I would have liked, but it is what it is. I mean, as much of a factory building programs I would have liked. Part of that just is I haven't had resources. So generally speaking, what I like to do with nationalist China is I like to puppet it. It's too much of an area to control. No, I'm not joining the Axis Germany. Sorry, that would just take too much time. It just wouldn't be efficient at this point in time. Let's see, total economic mobilization. Agriculture advance. Let's see here. Okay, good. Technology seems to be coming along well. I just need to get this up so I can start mass producing ships in a year or two. Let me just put that down. So things are going pretty well for Japan so far. After I defeat China, the next goal is just to get my country ready for World War II. So yeah, I invested quite a bit of money in producing like things like artillery and stuff. So my infantry are doing a lot better than the Chinese army is. The Chinese army is awful, and that was kind of an issue they frequently just had throughout this time period. Let's see here, the formation of Manchukuo or whatever it's called. Okay, yep, I'll create that. Another client state is good. So I just normally annex Shaanxi. There's no real point in creating a puppet state. It's too small. Plus it gives me a little extra IC. So we're going to continue the war with nationalist China, and our goal is to make them a puppet. Make them into a client state. The expansion of Manchukuo sounds good to me. Get rid of some of that useless territory that's not particularly helpful to me at the moment. Oh, okay, because I'm at war, I need much less consumer goods. Okay, that's a good thing. That means I can continue rearmament programs in the meantime. Let's see here. Okay, keep advancing doctrines. Doctrines are super useful, especially later in the game. Gotta keep up. Once again, it looks like I'm researching a lot of technologies, but all this stuff progressively increases because stuff researches faster the faster you research stuff. Yep, so nationalist China should fall in a number of months. I'm also... Can I invade them yet? No, my neutrality's too high still. I really need to get neutrality down. So yeah, so the UK is generating a lot of threat. So hopefully that'll push America away from... Okay, USA is drifting towards the Axis. So that's pushing some of the allies away. So I'll produce a bit more of this stuff and then I'll just stop. Conserve my manpower. I can always build more troops pretty quickly later in the war. I don't really need more artillery or that kind of stuff at the moment. So I'll just demobilize that. Actually, what I could probably use is a couple more garrisons. So I'll build some more garrisons. Let's see here. Just for when I start taking some islands later in the war. Okay, so gradually upgrading stuff. Getting ready for the National Shipbuilding Program. I have a couple escort carriers that'll be done soon. And Nationalist China is on the verge of just collapsing under the weight of my advance. Let's see. How do I decrease my threat? Okay, UK is not very high at the moment, unfortunately. Let's see. In North America, I'll also increase the threat of the United States. Hopefully that'll push some of the threats towards some other people. There we go. So Nationalist China is now a puppet of mine, and I also have occupied the northeastern part of China. So let's see, we're just going to demobilize. And I'm able to, keep all that stuff going. Oh, okay, so I need to reinvest in consumer goods now that the war is over. I don't really need that much upgrades. I'll just let that go over time. And now I should be getting oodles of stuff from Nationalist China. So let's see here. From convoys. Yep, getting a ton of stuff from convoys. I should probably build some more convoys, especially when the Americans start attacking me. Those are going to get sunk like crazy. Actually, surprisingly, one of the useful things to do when you're Japan is to build a lot of submarines, because you can really easily screw up the American supplies, because they have all the same supply issues you do trying to get stuff around. Let's see, the whole war with the Soviet Union, that nonsense. Okay, so we're going to demobilize. It would be nice if I could get into another war with one of these countries. See, how do I decrease neutrality? I can never remember. No, I'm not going to join the Axis. Random question, who's your favorite dictator tyrant of the 20th century? I guess like Salazar, Franco, and who's the other? Okay, I'm just going to cheat for no neutrality because neutrality's bullshit in this game. Let's see here. The idea that Japan isn't allowed to attack a lot of the Chinese miners is really dumb. Okay, so I'm going to impose a puppet regime there. I'm also going to invade nationalist China, and I think I'll just see, is there any resources worth annexing in nationalist China? I don't think nationalist China has like any resources. Nah, I'll just impose a puppet government there. The main idea is to be gamey and just keep myself at war so I can impose stronger, I can impose other laws. Let's see here. So, okay. So I will begin the shipbuilding program very soon. Almost ready to start. I'll just wait for the next run of that stuff to be completed. And then we'll start that. Oh, okay, good. I don't need consumer goods anymore because I'm at war. Yay! Okay, so looks like, yep, I'm able to start building industrial capacity again. I have lots of resources now from nationalist China. So that should take care of a lot of those shortages for the foreseeable future. And I have lots of industrial capacity, so things are going well for Japan. The sun is rapidly rising. Okay, I'll start building. Let's see, do I have modern destroyers I can build now? Not quite modern destroyers yet. I'll start building destroyers once I get the next round of technology. Okay, so let's see here. I can start building modern battleships and modern carriers now. Yeah, I'll just cancel those. Okay, so let's see here. We'll build some escort carriers. Okay. And I'll start building some more battleships. Because battleships are godlike in this game. Because for whatever reason, they made carriers pretty shitty in this game. Fleet carriers, I don't even know if they're really worth building, to be perfectly honest. They perform extremely similarly to escort carriers. Okay, let's see here. I don't really need more of those. Good. Okay. The Fuso should be ready soon, and we're just building some more stuff. We enforce puppet on Communist China, so Communist China is now a satellite state. And again, Guangxi clique will also be reduced to a satellite state by me. And there we go. Things are going very good for Japan at the moment. I just have to worry about some more submarine stuff soon. And it'll take a long time to upgrade my army, but once again, that's not really something I need to worry about until we head into World War II. Let's see here. Yep, the Fuso's almost done. I have a bunch of other battleships under construction and more convoys. You can never have enough convoys as Japan. I'll cancel the Fuso as soon as it's ready, just to save some IC. Let's see here. Come on, Fuso, you can do it. Okay, so wow, I've researched a lot of shit in the meantime. Demobilize the army. Yep, so things are going along great for the Empire of the Rising Sun. Got another battleship. I'll start the destroyer production program fairly soon. Let's see here. And carriers and battleships are being built. Treaty of Munich is happening. So there we go. China at this point has more or less been reduced to a satellite state of Japan, and I have access to the nearly limitless resources of the Chinese Republic and the mainland. So as you can see, we can start mass producing industrial capacity at this point in time. And I have plenty of additional garrisons. So, next goal is to start to get ready for war against the Allied powers. So, let's see here. Where are going to be the target areas? Knocking Australia out of the war is one of the top priorities as soon as that war starts. As well as knocking New Zealand out of the war. I don't intend to go to war with America right away, but I'll add the Philippines to the list of countries. I want to conquer Guam. And just all these various crappy islands. It's not super important. It's more just to deny them military bases than anything else. Yeah, if I can take Pearl Harbor, Midway, Wake Island, if I can take all these leapfrog bases, you can keep the US just from physically reaching you for a really long time. Let's see here. Yeah, just take all these shitty islands in the middle of nowhere like Fiji. So there we go. Christmas Island, Jarvis, Palmyra. Okay. There we go. Okay, I'll start ramping up the shipbuilding program in a little while. I'm just trying to get some industrial capacity ready. I'll stop building carrier air groups. I really don't need those anymore. And they're detracting from the great building projects. Okay, Sentai is being built. I'll build a couple more landing crafts. I need plenty of transports for the upcoming war. And submarines are also something we need soon. Okay, and building more of that stuff. Yeah, the real war will start in a little bit. Sorry, I'm trying to get through this as quickly as possible, but America and Britain are nothing to sniff at, so I really should be ready for when they start to come for me. Encryption. Let's see, fighters. I'll worry about that in a little bit. I don't really care that much about that sort of thing. Let's see here. Keep upgrading battleships and carriers. Submarines are also really high priority. I'll start mass building submarines once that technology is ready. Submarines don't take very long to build, to be perfectly honest, which is nice. Okay, destroyers. And upgrade that, upgrade that. Amphibious warfare equipment, jungle fighting, assault weapons. Yep, just upgrade all the infantry shit. We're gonna need it because Japan has no tanks whatsoever. Japanese tanks are awful. Good, have lots of transports, so I can survive at least a little bit of American convoy raiding. I can do a lot of convoy raiding as myself once I get the fleet up and running. Let's see here. Industrial capacity is growing very rapidly now. I have some new battleships that will be... Let's see. Okay, time to start. Let's see, was all the destroyer stuff ready? Nope, not yet. Okay, I'll start building destroyers soon. I'm a bit behind where I like to be in terms of the naval program, but yeah, it's all right. So long as I can put up a reasonable fight against America when the time comes, that's okay. The goal is if I can hold out for a while against America, I can continue to build up my industrial capacity, which is kind of priority one at the moment. Units in poor supply. Okay, I have a couple more escort carriers that are ready for service, which is good. It's really the only part of my naval program that is going on at the moment. And getting lots of technological advances. Good. Okay, everything seems to be going okay. And we're heading into war in a year or two, probably. Submarine engine should be done reasonably soon. Let's see, carrier air groups. I don't need that. And I have lots of... Oh, shit. Oh, I didn't realize consumer goods demand was that high. Oops. I gotta get that down as soon as possible. That was negligent of me to ignore that. Let's see. People are debating civic versus ethnic nationalism. All I can say is polls out, Jamaicans in, civic, which is kind of what British civic nationalism is about. It's basically about physically removing all the Poles from Britain and replacing them with Jamaicans, because Jamaicans are more culturally similar, for whatever reason, whatever that means, to the British people. Let's see. Packies in, Poles out. Yep. It's funny when I talk to like some English people just how much they hate the Poles. Like, they really fucking hate them. Like, they hate them more than they hate, like, the Indians and the Sikhs and that kind of thing. It's really weird. Okay. Let's see. That stuff is still being built. Yep, and in Europe it looks like World War II is about to start very soon. And we can start mass producing battleships. I love battleships. It's too bad that battleships, yeah. It's too bad battleships kind of fell out of use and they just aren't viable in modern warfare. Because I always like the idea of having these massive, stately ships, but It is what it is. Nothing I can do about battleships, but I digress. Good, descent is going back down. IC is going up. And Germany succeeded in conquering Poland. So I haven't decided when I'm going to enter the war exactly yet. Entering it when Germany invades Russia isn't a bad idea. Obviously, I can't get all the way to Moscow from the east. That's ridiculous. But I can still do a lot of damage by diverting Soviet divisions in the Far East. Let's see here. Someone says I'm a Serb. Well, God is a Serb, so I mean that's a good thing to say about your ethnic group. Oh, remove kebab. Based Serbians, TBH. Let's see, SS visibility. Yeah, I can start mass producing subs now. So I'll start building them in groups of 8, I think. Increase education, and I can upgrade my extraction technologies, which is very important. Let's see here. Let's see, is that round of battleships done yet? Yes, it's done. Okay, so I can start mass producing battleships now. I was just waiting for those to finish so I could get the bonus for having better battleship IC. So those will be done in a year or so. And I also need to start mass producing destroyers as soon as that technology is ready. Okay. Oh, I have a lot of free IC now I can put into more production. Good, 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 good. Let's see here. Technology. Warning equipment. Warship ASW. Anti-submarine warfare. And we're just going to keep advancing. Sea's destroyer technology is almost ready. Oh, wait. Battleships are still being upgraded. Oh, well. The next run of battleships will have the enhanced stuff. Let's see here. Mechanical engineering advance. Good, good, good. Upgrade radar, I guess. I don't really need radar. Radar didn't help the Japanese during World War II. Okay, and I can start building carriers now, so I have the upgraded carrier stuff. Escort carriers are extremely cheap to produce, so they're always a good thing to mass build, because you can get a whole bunch of them. They don't take very long or cost many resources. I guess, see, how much do fleet carriers are so damn expensive. I guess I'll build a couple fleet carriers just for completion's sake. And we have some more escort carriers that are almost finished. And just continue building. Let's see, is destroyers technology is ready now, so let's mass produce destroyers. Destroyers cost virtually nothing to build, so I'll start building like 10 of them. And just keep shoveling them in. Okay, so in a year or two, I should be ready to enter World War II, to be perfectly honest. I just need some more of a fleet to take on the American horde. And in the meantime, just keep upgrading stuff. Now let's see here. Do I have the troops to fight the Soviets? I probably do, actually. As I've said, I can always just build more infantry. That won't take very long once we decide to enter into the war. Someone's mentioning Calvinism. The interesting thing I always found about Calvinism is, despite the fact that Calvinism is very low church, Calvinism has an extremely developed theology. It's kind of the only form of low church Protestantism I can think of that has a very sophisticated theology. Most forms of Protestantism that are low church have extremely basic or very, I guess you could say, stripped down theologies compared to more kind of more elaborate high church. Yeah, it's not always that high church and developed theology go hand in hand, but there's definitely a relationship there in a lot of places. Let's see. That's continuing to advance. Good. The assassination of Leon Trotsky. Glad that communist bastard's dead. It's funny because I've had Natsocks in the past who have gotten angry at me because I hate communists so much. There's some people who will be like, no, I mean, Calvinist theology is very well developed compared to most forms of Protestant theology. Lutheran theology is also fairly well developed, but Lutheranism's a lot more high church than most Protestant. If you can even, some high church Lutherans who like to LARP will actually deny that their religion is even really Protestant, to be perfectly honest. I've seen some people who insist on calling themselves evangelical Catholics or that sort of thing, just because they don't want to be associated with a lot of the other movements that came out of the Reformation, like the Reformed, like all those kind of things. So people are talking a lot about capitalism versus socialism, which is, I guess, kind of one of those very old questions. I mean, when we come to economic theories, I kind of have more of a mixed view of economics than I do on social. I think there are good arguments to be made both ways. I guess in general, I kind of favor a relatively low tax economy that has strong worker protections and public safety regulations and consumer protection stuff. But I don't know. I actually don't think the current system is that bad. I think taxes are too high and welfare's too high. I think the government could be a lot smaller, but I also think worker protection laws aren't as good or aren't enforced as much as they should be. In that there's a lot of just kind of shady behavior that goes on in the private sector. Cincinnati says co-ops plus market plus low state intervention outside of workers' rights and environmental regulations equals based. Yeah, that's kind of how I am. I guess I also would support state investments in I kind of also have a bit of, I think it was called American School Economics is the traditional term for it. American School Economics is kind of the idea that the purpose of the government in a market economy is to create the conditions to facilitate public enterprise. Private enterprise. So, kind of in American school, you had protective tariffs to kind of get the economy going. So there was a couple principles. There was protective tariffs, investments in technological development, and investments in technological development and public education, large investments in infrastructure and that sort of thing. And also, what are some other aspects of it? Yeah, so the idea was just to kind of create a well educated, technologically advanced society that in which the market could flourish, in which there was like ample access to cheap electricity, good roads, good infrastructure, that kind of thing. I do think, and this is something I've kind of more and more come to as I get older, is I do think large wealth inequality is bad for society. That's not to say all inequality is bad, but extreme inequality, I do think is actually very bad for society. I do think it dramatically destabilizes society and is overall not a good thing. And that's not to say there can't be rich people, there can't be poor people, but I do think in some Western countries it's gone too much in one direction or another. I kind of agree with what John Paul II said. He said, "If by capitalism we mean an economy that acknowledges private property rights, where people can have their own businesses and private initiative is encouraged, then capitalism is certainly compatible with Catholicism. If by capitalism we mean a political system in which the only purpose of human beings is to generate profit and they're seen merely as units of value, then no, capitalism is not compatible with Catholicism." And I think that's generally speaking a good way of looking at it. There's a difference between capitalism as an economic system and capitalism as a political system. It may not always seem that there's a distinction there, but I do think there's a distinction there. So there's the question of what do billionaires contribute to society? Now, this is an interesting one and one I'm kind of sympathetic to. I think when you talk about billionaires and their contributions to society, I think you have to keep in mind there's kind of two different groups we can talk about. On one hand, you have people like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or other people who have partaken in building companies that have produced immense amount of wealth. They've invented a good or service. They provided a product that the market and the public actively needs. That actually needs, and I do think those people do deserve it. They've built huge companies. Bill Gates' company, Microsoft, completely changed the way people do business. It dramatically increased the efficiency of the economy, and I think overall was probably a positive thing for economic growth. So if we ask, does he deserve his money? Did he earn his money? I'd say yes, he did. Whereas on the other hand, you also have people like George Soros or people who only make money just by moving money around. And that's kind of my issue with a lot of modern Wall Street. If I don't think a lot of it is actually investing in, I guess you could say, businesses that produce goods or services. A lot of that sort of thing. A lot of it just seems to kind of be moving money around and making cash through kind of cheesy ways, which I guess is kind of my objection to some of it. But they do provide a lot of money to the economy. I think part of the issue is taxes are just too high in general, and that kind of discourages people from investing because they just don't really have the income to invest. I think that is something we have to think about as a society. Because the thing about tax rates that I think people don't really acknowledge a lot of the time is taxes are primarily something that affects the lower class. Taxes are normally paid by the middle class. Because let's do a thought experiment. If you're upper class, you have ways of hiding your money. You can move it to offshore. You can do what Donald Trump did and claim a group of losses to avoid paying taxes for years. And I'm not criticizing him for it. I would have done the same thing, but I'm just using it as an example. If you're wealthy, you aren't paying anywhere near the tax rate against you. So it's kind of irrelevant what the actual tax rate is. You're not going to pay it if you're one of the super rich. Whereas the middle class, doesn't really have a way to evade taxes, and the lower class doesn't pay taxes generally speaking. So it's all kind of irrelevant. Something I'm actually very interested in is minimum income, which I think might actually ultimately be something we have to think about of a society if automation really does take off and there's a lack of work for a lot of the population. We might have to start thinking of creative solutions in order to deal with that. So just kind of some food for thought. I do think in a lot of ways there's a case to be made that minimum income is a lot better than normal welfare because it does reduce the cost of bureaucracy. Like you don't really have a third party that's laundering the money before you send it out. It's just sent out directly to people. You could almost automate it. Everybody just gets their check in the mail, and that's it. So I think that is kind of a good thing about that type of capitalism as opposed to what's it called again? Sorry, that kind of welfare as opposed to other types of welfare. I think it was Milton Friedman who supported it. Some libertarian economists have supported the idea of minimum income because they see it as being less bad. Because I think it was Milton Friedman or whoever who said you'll always need some form of welfare in a developed industrial society. And this is kind of the least bad one I can come up with compared to some of the other ones. So I think that is kind of some food for thought. In Ontario, they're trying out minimum income, and I'm really interested to see what the results of such a thing would be. Cincinnati says, yes, Friedman wanted a negative income tax. I mean, it's an interesting idea. It's one of those things where it might work, it might not work. But, I'm not kind of wedded to it either way. I'm just kind of interested in it from, a political scientist standpoint, how such a scheme would work if it was put into practice. Would minimum income prove to be better? Would it prove to be worse? Would it disincentivize work? I mean, and it depends how you do it, because some systems there's really large clawbacks under it. Once you start making any money, they claw it back extremely quickly, so it kind of decentivizes work. There's the idea maybe that your minimum income is exempt from taxes. But, if you think about the number of carve-outs, exemptions, and just stuff like that we have under the current system, I think there is something to be said for having minimum income as opposed to a lot of the current stuff we have to endure at the moment. So, I don't know, just some food for thought. But, yeah. I think just while we're talking about left versus right in terms of politics, I think one of the things that makes me really sad is how the environment's become a left-right issue. Where I kind of feel that we on the right should be the environmentalists because we fundamentally believe in blood and soil. blood and soil conservatism. The land is part of the nation. The sacred soil is part of the nation. So I think if anybody should want to preserve the environment and want to leave a cleaner environment for our children, now Cincinnatus brings up public health care. Now, I live in Canada under public health care, and I have very mixed feelings about it. In some ways, I do think it is a good idea. Um, I do kind of feel once again, in a modern industrial society, with the amount of money it costs to buy healthcare, that some form of public healthcare is probably a good idea. I kind of like the German system where there's public health insurance, but a lot of the healthcare delivery is private, which I think is kind of an interesting idea and something I'd like to try. But it is I don't know. I don't think it's an open and it's an open and shut issue, to be perfectly honest. I think there are a lot of good arguments for public health care, and there's a lot of good arguments against public health care. The issue with switching to a market-based solution, like a completely market-based solution, is I'm sure it would lead to large cost savings in the long term. I'm sure it would lead to more innovation. It would make things better, but the transition time would be extremely brutal. Transitioning from a public system to a private system would leave a lot of people incapable of paying for medications they need to survive. So I'm kind of sympathetic towards it, but I don't know. It's a difficult one. I think if people say public health care is a cut and dry issue, I think that's kind of oversimplifying it a bit. The Canadian system has a lot of problems, but is that because of immigration, where we now have a low trust society? Is that because of a variety of other things? It's kind of hard to say for certain exactly where the good and bad aspects of it begin and end. So I think I'll enter into World War II as soon as Germany goes to war with Russia. I should have a big enough army now to do it. I think another thing about socialism is socialism really depends whether or not socialism is practical or doable. I think depends a lot on the character of the people. Like the countries where socialism I think works best are Northwestern European high trust societies. I think it works decently well there, etc. I'll be back in 1 second. I'm just going to grab a drink. I'm back. I was just grabbing a root beer. Voice is just getting a little sore from talking for so long, but that's fine. So just keep pumping this stuff out. Gotta be ready for the war with Mother Russia. And I still have lots of manpower left, so that's all good. hopefully I'll have enough ships to go to war against the United States. And AT brigades I'll also send to the mainland. The Soviets certainly have a lot of tanks. I have no tanks, but the Soviets have lots of them. Soviets produce really good tanks, to be perfectly honest. So once those destroyers are ready, I'll start building more advanced ones. Yeah, destroyers are super important, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. So someone's asking about, why don't you just play Battlefield 1 like a normal person, dude? I don't own Battlefield 1. Actually, what I did buy was I bought Nier Automata was on sale, 30% off. So I got Nier Automata, which I'm actually looking forward to playing. It's just these games are so big nowadays. It's like 35 gigs. And for those of you who don't know, Canadian internet is really, really bad. Canada's kind of infamous for having the worst internet in the developed world. It is absolutely wretched here. It's because Canada basically has a state-enforced duopoly between Behel and Robbers. And both Behel and Robbers are awful, awful companies who just basically scam the Canadian public. And there's not a lot we can do because it's basically set up to be a duopoly between the two of them. Is it worse than America, Argent? Yes. Canada is widely regarded as having the worst internet cell phones of any developed country. Our internet is as bad on average as at like some Central Asian shitholes. I forget if it's like Kyrgyzstan. It's some like shitty country in Central Asia that has similar quality internet to us. And that's literally how bad it is in Canada. Like, you can't get unlimited data in Canada. It's not something that's publicly available. I don't even think if you work for, like, the government, you can get unlimited data. It's just something that doesn't exist under the current Canadian system. Let's see here. And I'll dispatch the last group of troops to the mainland, and then I think I'm pretty much ready for war at this point in time. So that's exciting. So the first target is, of course, going to be the Soviet Union. I'll deploy some artillery over there. Lots of Marines. Marines are going to be critical as I invade more and more territory. Let's see. Deploy a couple more garrison divisions. I'll deploy some AA. Okay, here we go. Okay, and I'll deploy my next round of cruisers. So let's just take a look at what the current fleet is I have. So I currently have 400 divisions, which isn't bad at all. I definitely need some more artillery. I don't have a ton of artillery at the moment. Let's see, Allied Navy, I have 17 battleships, 5 carriers, 20 escort carriers, 57 destroyers, and 31 submarines. Let's see. Someone's asking me how I develop the attention span to read a book. If you don't have the attention span to read a book, do what I do and listen to audiobooks. Audiobooks are kind of a great way to get through books. I listen to them while I play my 3DS on the train. So that's a lot of fun. It passes the time quickly because I have a long commute in the morning. So, yeah. Let's see. Is the Soviet Union at war with Germany yet? Okay, the Soviet Union is at war with Germany. Okay, so I'm going to invade. I'm going to join the Axis now. And I am going to join the war against the Soviet Union. Oh, cool. I get to demand Vichy France's colonies. Very good. And I'll make those part of the Imperial General HQ, I think. Yep, okay, good. Put pressure on Siam. There we go. Siam is now a puppet of mine. And let's see here. Since I won't be at war with the US for at least a little while, I can start an invasion of India as well. Yeah, so going along with the whole how do I develop the attention span to read books, what I do is I have the Audible app on my phone. And when I use the Audible app, I just have it on like in the background, like if I'm going for a walk or I'm doing some cleaning or vacuuming or something. I just kind of listen to it in the to the background as I'm going. So I'm going to declare limited war, and I will puppet the Soviet Union. So is the United States in the Allies yet? No, they aren't in the Allies yet. Okay. So I'm going to declare limited war, so I'm only against the Soviet Union at the moment. So let's see here. I'm not going to declare war just yet on the rest of the Allies. So I can switch to total economic mobilization. Let's see, service by requirement. Good. Supplies, reinforcements. I don't know. Kwangtung, I think, has enough troops. Yeah, they have plenty of troops. So I'll just leave these guys to go. Let's see how production's going at the moment. Another run of battleships and will be done soon. Lots of submarines. Let's see. Am I building carriers at the moment? No, I'm not building carriers. Should definitely be building some of those. Let's see. Escort carriers. Well, escort carriers are really cheap to build. Okay, I'll build like another couple of those. So yeah, I'm making decent progress into the Soviet Union. So I'm going to add puppeting them as a war goal and setting up a puppet government in Xinjiang as well. Also, I might as well go to war with the Yangtze clique and try to set up a puppet government there as well. See, they're all asking to run up debts. That's fine with me. Actually, out of curiosity, let's see how the various Axis armies compare. Okay, so Germany has a substantially larger army than me. And they have tanks, but oh well. Vichy France, Manchukuo. See, does Manchuria have very many? Yeah, they have like nothing. Navy. That's funny. The comparison of the navies. So I seem to be doing pretty good in the Far East. So they're asking me to join the war against the Allied powers. So should I join the war against the Allies? I'll give it another month or two. Let's see, my next round of battleships will be ready in September. Maybe I'll join the war then. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. So Brazil has joined the Allies now, which is weird. Yeah, like near the end of the war, all these random countries just started joining the Allies. It had nothing to do with the war, like Turkey and that kind of thing. It was very odd. I guess they just figured it was in their interest to maybe get some of the spoils of war or to get some land lease aid from America if they joined the war at the last minute. I don't know. Let's see. How do I upgrade carrier air groups? There we go. Medium bomb. Fighter. Oh well, I'll just upgrade that stuff too. See, how are the Nazis doing? The Nazis look like they're getting bogged down in Western Russia, which is kind of sad. Looks like the Romanians are getting their asses kicked. Hopefully I'm helping out a bit. I'm tying up a fair number of divisions in the Far East. That's always one of the big what-ifs of the war. What if Japan had joined in? I don't know. I think Japan probably could have done something. Okay, Germany, fine. I'll join the war against the Allies. There we go. The Allies, the United Nations has been declared. Oh shit, the Philippines are part of this now? I hadn't even realized that America was part of the Allies. Crap. Oh well. It's not a big deal. I have enough troops to fight the Americans as well. Let's see. Naval defense sounds okay. And switch to attacking stance. So we get Tora Tora. Cool. Gulf of Tonkin happened to me. Leadership and research efficiency. Good. Yeah, so the home islands have plenty of defensive forces. So now we just have to expand outwards and start conquering stuff. And I want to install puppet governments into these countries. There's no point in annexing them. That was kind of one of the funny things about World War II was that the Germans were willing to throw the Australians under the bus to get Japanese help. Yeah, sure, Japan, you can colonize Australia. That's totally in line with our ideology. It's perfectly all right. Let's see here. Some more Marines. I don't really need more infantry at the moment. I'll just preserve my manpower. I'm sure I'll need all that in reinforcements as the war carries on. I'll get rid of that stuff. I don't need it. And just focus on naval production, IC, and that kind of thing. Okay, so let's see if we're having any naval battles yet. Okay, so I've lost a couple ships. What the fuck? Britain's taken Okinawa. How the hell did that happen? Oops. Should have been paying more attention there. Oh, well, these things happen. So, yeah. Should have more battleships. I'm going to switch the Imperial General HQ to naval offense and order them to start engaging the various enemy fleets. Yunnan has collapsed. The Philippines appear to be starting to fall before my superior Japanese might. Now here's the question, should I bother to bring Taiwan? I'm going to bring Thailand into the war. It'll help out holding some British units down in India. There we go. I sunk a British battle cruiser, so that'll help. If I can sink some of the British capital and American capital ship fleet, then they probably won't be able to get caught up with me again before the end of the war. Which is kind of what I'm aiming for at the moment. To stay ahead in the number of overall capital ships I have. Okay, so the Soviets are getting creamed in the east. They seem to be winning in the west. What I've had happen in a number of these games is I'll win in the east as Japan, and Germany will lose in the west, which is not an uncommon outcome whenever I'm playing. Let's see. Let's see, theaters. Okay, so seem to be making a bit of progress in the islands. Oh, wow, I just lost a huge number of troops. Ugh, one of my main invasion forces. That's not good. Looks like, regardless, I'm going to retake Okinawa, which is very important. I should be destroying more American and British ships. I wonder what's taking them so long. Okay, so September 20th, we'll have the next round of battleships ready. And it'll just keep in researching increased stuff. Build some new destroyers, build some more submarines. And just continue to mass produce battleships. Okay, let's see how the naval war is going. I've lost a lot of... Well, I've lost a bit so far. It seems like the naval battle is at the moment kind of a draw. Hopefully that new round of battleships will help to turn the tide a bit in my favor. All the battleships I'm producing are like modern ones, as opposed to the less developed ones of some of the other countries in this conflict. Let's see here. Okay, I've done a little bit of damage to some of the Americans. Not nearly enough, though. Okay, so I'm losing a lot of my transporters But I'm also dealing some damage to the enemy in terms of their navy. What I really need to get in is a decisive battle and destroy a whole bunch of their ships at once. Bridging equipment. Oh wow, I lost a battleship. Holy shit, I'm getting my ass kicked. At least we're doing well against the Soviet Union. Germany's currently sucking against the Soviet Union. Yeah, like they should be doing better. Like I have a pretty large, powerful fleet. Anyways, guys, we'll continue this next time. Hope you enjoyed this. I'll talk to you guys later.